Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So on today's video, we're going to be working on the GX470. So this video, I'm going to show you guys how to fix an oil leak that's coming from the valve covers. So we're going to go ahead and change all the valve cover gaskets, the spark plugs and everything while we're in here up top. Eventually, I'm going to finish the whole project by doing the water pump and timing belt service. I'll have a separate video for that if you guys want to check that out. But on today's video, we're just going to go over the actual valve cover gaskets and just getting those changed out, so stay tuned. So that engine leak that I've got has gotten pretty bad. A couple weeks ago, probably less than a couple hundred miles, I cleaned everything out. I pressure cleaned under here just to see where the leak was coming from. And just look at that. Look how soaked that is right there with oil and grease. And just underneath here is just crazy right now, the amount of oil, and it's all fresh oil just because I cleaned up all the grime recently. It's all this right here. Everything's got a nice coat of oil on it. It's all nice and shiny. But yeah, I definitely need to fix that leak. I can kind of see it coming from the valve cover, and I hope it's just the valve cover. Like right here, it's a telltale sign of it coming right off the valve cover. It's actually right at the edge of the valve cover right there. And you can see the drips. It's a similar story on this side. It's a bit harder to see. Once I take this cover off, you can see it better, but it's that same corner of the valve cover, dripping oil, fresh new oil coming out of there. And you kind of see the signs of it along here too, just coming out. And then right there, you can see that nice pool of oil on that little lip. But yeah, definitely coming from the valve cover. To start off, we want to go through the actual manual and just to see how everything's done. So we'll go ahead and take apart mostly the top of the engine cover, the intake, all this stuff right here. Eventually when I do the timing belt service, I gotta take apart the radiator, all that stuff up there. For the valve cover gasket, this is basically the diagram right here. We've got the 10 millimeters that we gotta take apart. The rest of this stuff can all come off in one piece. We just gotta take out the coil packs and everything. The oil fill and all this other stuff kind of stays on top of there when we take that apart. On the other side, very similar. It's a little bit less complicated on the passenger side right here. It's just the 9 bolts. Over here on the actual vehicle, basically you gotta take apart all the plastic on top of here so we can get clearance on everything. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and take the bumper off and all this other junk off because it's gonna make it a little bit easier for me to work. I won't be rubbing all over the bumper and scratching it up while I'm doing this. Plus, eventually when I do the timing belt, I gotta take apart all this stuff anyway, so I might as well just do it now just to get it out of the way. If you guys haven't seen my previous video on doing headlights and all that, I kind of show you guys how to take this bumper apart, so I'm not going to show it on this video. I'm just go ahead and just take it apart. Let's take apart all the plastic covers right here. They were all just easy clips that I actually just pushed and popped off. 2 10 millimeters to take off the engine cover right here. And that pretty much takes apart all the plastic so you can access most of the stuff that you need to do to get to the valve covers. All right, now that we've got everything taken apart up here and have room to work, we need to get into the actual engine bay and get everything apart. So the first thing you want to do for the valve covers and everything is take out the intake. So the intake is just 10 millimeter here, another 10 millimeter right there. That takes off these worm clamps, the OEM worm clamps. Go ahead and disconnect the hoses. There's a hose here. I believe there's another hose underneath and then a hose up here. Just unconnect all the hoses, unconnect the map sensor right here and the harness and all that along with this thing right here, this vacuum hose. Take the whole arm off first and then you can take apart the box. You can unclip these things right here to take apart the face right there and then take apart the bottom box. That leaves you a bunch of room to work to get to the valve cover and get to all the stuff under here. We were able to take all that off. The 3 vacuum hoses for the intake, this one right here, there's a little baby one and this one up top with no clamp, just slides right in. Take those out, take the thing out. When I unplugged the map sensor, of course I broke this clip right here. So this is another casualty. If you saw my parts video on all these projects, I did order extras of these, so I'll go ahead and replace that on a separate video on replacing connectors. But when I popped that thing open, it cracked and broke that thing. So that's very common. We're gonna run into a couple of these, especially on the coil packs and all that. I'm 100% sure that a couple of these are gonna break if I'm not careful, if they haven't already broken already from a previous owner, but I don't think they've ever been taken apart. Went ahead and took the intake out. Now we're clear over here. We kind of put everything out of the way. This pretty much frees up some room to start taking apart the coil packs. So all these, you want to go ahead and carefully take off the clips. What I suggest is not to push this clip right here, but to actually take a little screwdriver and kind of pry it a little bit and then just kind of slip it out to avoid breaking it. But if you do break it, you're gonna have to change out that clip or do the zip tie method. I have brand new clips, so I'll change out the ones that go bad. So as I'm looking over here on what we need to take apart, we probably just want to unbolt this 10mm, kind of get it out of the way. That's kind of in the path of some of the bolts right here. So there's 10mm. Like I said earlier, there's 9 of them all around. So there's probably 4 across the top, 4 across the bottom, and there's 1 right here that takes the valve cover off. And then just kind of clear all the other wires and cables out of the way once we take the coil packs off. Taking these off to avoid breaking them, like I said, I don't push the back part here. What I do is I take a little tiny screwdriver, I kind of slightly wedge that thing over, and then I wiggle this thing. So you want to push it down a little bit to release some of the tension, and then go ahead, just pop that thing out a little bit, and then using your other hand you kind of wiggle it and it pops right out. So as you can see on the time lapse, I pop it out pretty easily, but I just wanted to show you the detail in case you guys try to do this without breaking all these clips. We got all the coil packs without breaking. When I took apart the VVTI gear right here, this thing broke. This one's a very common one that breaks all the time. Luckily I got a bunch of these spares, so we'll go ahead and swap that out at the end. But yeah, that was expected to break as always with these clips right here. All right, got them all apart. What I did was I ended up putting some Sharpie here. I put 1, 3, 5, 7, so I know where they go back in as far as the order goes. Looking inside, looks like everything's clean here, no oil or anything, so there's no oil leaks on the inside seal, so we're good there. I'm gonna go ahead and clear these things out and start with those 10mm all around just to get this thing going. So we went ahead and took all 9 of these out. One of the things I noticed as I was unscrewing it, there was literally no tension or tightness on these, which means over time the gasket actually flattens out on the valve cover, and then all these little gaskets right here on the screws also flatten out, and that's what causes it to get loose. So there was no pressure or really nothing holding it on, which causes the leaking and the seepage. So that's another telltale sign of the gasket just failing and getting old and brittle and flat. This is why I never trust these low mileage, 1 owner, 2 owner, well-maintained crap. This is the trust issues I have here. Look at this crap right here. I've never seen an engine with 120,000 miles with this kind of buildup of just old oil that's never been circulated. It's all dried on. This thing is nasty. This freaking, when I was taking this valve cover off, these things were just snapping. I just heard things falling. These things are just like freaking rock hard. This is freaking crazy. All the valve cover rings right there broke off either on the actual sleeve or fell to the ground when I was taking this thing off. You can see all that crap is breaking. This is crazy for 120 or 130,000 miles. This is crazy that this car was not well maintained or nobody ever changed the oil and just left this thing sitting here. This is gonna be a lot of work for me to clean up all this crap on this side, but wait until you see the engine side. Look at this crap over here. This is why I have trust issues with used cars. This thing's just caked on oil from no one ever changing the oil or doing any kind of maintenance and letting this thing sit around. I've never seen this shit so bad. No wonder this thing was leaking oil like crazy from the valve cover gaskets. All of them, I still have bits and pieces on here that I have to clean up. I need to make sure nothing fell into here, but I can't see anything because this thing's pitch freaking black. This is just ridiculous on how poorly maintained this was. Here's that ring right here that just broke off as I was taking them off, because yeah, none of these seals are actually working anymore. Originally I wasn't going to change, or I was just going to examine the leak right here for the VVTI. I think I'm gonna have to replace it because I do not trust this thing being intact or being in good condition. Same with those half moons back here. We're gonna have to go ahead and take apart those half moons, change out the seal on that, but this thing is just ridiculously dirty and nasty. Side, it's a little bit different as far as a few of the things you got to do. Go ahead, have to unbolt this 10mm. Same with that harness. We need to unbolt the fuel line right here. So that's bolted to the valve cover. On some models of the GX, I think the earlier versions, this whole fuel area right here kind of gets in the way of the valve cover. On the 08, they actually redesigned it so there's more clearance, so you can actually get this thing out and get the coil packs out without interfering with any of this stuff or the brake lines. I know on the earlier versions, people had issues with interference with the brake lines. But other than that, I think, oh yeah, the PCV valve right here, we need to go ahead and take that off of there or down here so we can get it off of this and then pull this thing apart. All right, we'll go ahead and take this thing off real time so you guys can see it crackling and breaking off as we take it out. Hear that cracking stuff drop. Go ahead and just clear everything out of the way. Oh, fuck. Again, this side, look at how caked on everything is. That rear lower corner, there's just a bunch of freaking old oil right there, just caked up, as you can see. But overall, yeah, I mean, this is just nasty. It's gonna take a bunch of work to clean up, but look at all this crap right here, just caked on, nasty ass. Years of oil and grease just build up and then no oil changes, and this thing is probably sitting around for the longest time. So you can see right here with the valve cover that's still intact. Pay attention to the corners where you see this kind of gray material. That's that form in place gasket. The one we're going to use is black, but this one is the factory one, the gray. So those are the places that you're going to have to put some of that in once we put it all back together. On the back side, it's got those two half moons. We have to remove it off the head side, clean all that stuff up, clean the mating surfaces and reseal those, along with putting it right here where it kind of squishes out. Other than that, I'm about to spend a lot of time with brake clean and carburetor cleaner and whatever else I can get rid of all this carbon buildup and just all this years of gunk on here to clean this thing all up and then peel off this seal. This gasket's probably all going to break off just like the other side once I start cleaning this up. I was able to take the whole thing off in one piece, but look at that thing. It's stiff as a board. That thing is not going anywhere. It's freaking brittle as hell. If I go just like that, it just snaps. But yeah, this thing is long overdue for a change. On this side, look at all this crap right here. Just the gunk in the lower corner that's just built up. Just nasty. Start the cleanup of these valve covers. I'm gonna go ahead and take apart the PCV valve. So this is one of the $5 parts we want to replace. Seeing the condition of this oil, I'm assuming this pipe right here is also pretty crudded up, so I'm gonna have to put some solvent in here to kind of break down some of that and get this thing clean. For the PCV, you also want to try to preserve this little piece of foam rubber. I'm not sure what it's for or the purpose of it, other than just keeping the heat sink off of it or whatever, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to save that by taking that off. For the cleaning and everything, I'm gonna go ahead and take this thing off too. It's two 10mm, and there's a metal gasket that helps seal this thing up right here. All right, we went ahead and took that off. You can see all that caked on grime in here. That's pretty nasty. And even the PCV valve right here, this thing is an odd size. It's a 22mm, which is not a common size wrench or anything that I had. I had to use a 23mm I had, but that was enough to get it off. But overall, this thing is caked up. If you shake it, the check valve actually still works in there, but I don't know how much blow by it's actually collecting because of the condition of this thing and how caked up it is. So we'll go ahead and just swap all this stuff out, clean all this crap out as much as we can with some solvent. I'm gonna go ahead and just let it soak outside for a little bit. Put some super clean on here and see what that does. Before I actually clean it up, I'm gonna go ahead and just pop out all the center gaskets right there for the spark plug holes. Most of them broke off already, but I'm gonna try to get the rest of them out and just clean up that area a little bit before I start soaking these in a solvent bath to try to clean up these baffles. All right, we were able to take apart the old seals right there. They actually have a metal ring inside them that reinforces them, so you can't really break them or get them out of there. So what I did was, you have to do this anyways, whether it's clean or dirty, and you have to get them out. You have to bend 3 of those 4 tabs. They were actually pretty easy. I got the screwdriver right under them, lifted them up, and then bent them back with a screwdriver. You can see pretty much all of them are bent back. Once I did that, you saw that I hammered basically horizontally into there with a flathead, and it kind of marred it up right there, and then over here. And once you get the flathead in there, you just twist the flathead and it pops it out. Once it unseats it from this edge, you just work on the second edge, and then the whole thing comes right out. All right, through a bunch of elbow grease, you guys saw me scrubbing and scraping and all that stuff off of here. I took it outside, sprayed it down with a bunch of super clean, let it soak for a little bit, and then scraped some more. So ended up getting pretty much 95% of that buildup off of this thing. I just couldn't get all those little spots there, but over time, the new oil and just all the circulation would go ahead and just pretty much loosen all that up and break it all up, and then clean this thing up back to being pretty much stock clean again like it's supposed to be. So the next thing I need to do is just clean out all these little holes. I left this thing sitting out overnight for a couple nights, and it started oxidizing already, as you can see right there. So I gotta clean all that out, and then we're gonna go ahead and tap in the new seals right now. All right, so one of the things in the instruction manual and everything to basically put these things in, remember they go in this direction where it slips over the actual sleeves on the head. So it goes in this way, which makes sense because the valve cover comes down on it. So just make sure that this side, which is the side with the metal and the lettering and everything, goes that direction. And then one of the things I discovered is you got to actually bend all 4 of these, even though we only took 3 of them or 2 of them to take it out. Now to get it back in, we need to basically make sure that it's square and it goes straight in, because we got to tap it in with a seal tap. All right, so I was trying to find something that would fit around here that would actually clear the inner lip but still get the outer lip. I tried one of my press kits right here. This is a 36mm inner diameter, but the outer diameter is gonna be too big, so it won't get there, or it's gonna interfere when I tap it down and hit those tabs. The next thing I tried was one of my Vivor sockets right here. This is an impact socket. It's a 6-point. I tried that. That thing pretty much does get it, so this thing would work. In addition, I have just a regular right here thin-walled 12-point 32, and this one might be better. This one clears everything. It clears the inside because of the 12 points, so it clears all the rubber right here on the inside, and then it's thin enough where it's going to clear those tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and try to tap it in with this guy. Also, just as an FYI, these seals right here for the spark plugs are all made by NOK, the same seal manufacturer that makes everything else as far as the main seals and all that, and that's the part number right there on the inside of it. So pretty much these things are cheap enough, and you change them infrequent enough where you might as well get the OEM ones instead of aftermarket. So to start this off with, I ended up putting this on the ground because I needed something firm to actually hit it on. So each one of these, I'm going to end up putting a little bit of multi-purpose grease all around the ring of it before I tap it in, just to give it a little bit of lube and something to slide on. So we'll go ahead and just start right here. Once you tap it in, you feel that it's all the way in. Check around the edge on the back side to make sure it's seated, and you can see the squeeze of the grease and everything. And on the back side, just make sure it's all even around as you go. So pretty much all of them are seated. This is what they look like. Just basically flush on the back side here where we tapped it in. You can see on that 32 millimeter 12 point I used, it kind of left a little bit of indentation in the rubber, but that's no big deal. It's on the back side along the metal edge of it anyways. So what we need to do now is we need to just basically fold everything back over, tap it in, and secure it back to the way it was. I'm gonna use a little punch to do this, just to tap it over once I bend it back with a needle nose. So bending it back with those pliers, just some big flat pliers, got it pretty much in the spot. Using that punch, that last minute just to get it to the final flatness, worked out perfectly. So these things are good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other one off camera, finish this install up, and then we'll get these valve covers back on once I'm done with the rest of the timing job on this car. So the next thing to do with this valve cover job is to get those half moons on the back there. They're directly behind each of the cams on each side. On this side, which is the passenger side, you don't have to worry as much trying to get them out because you either drop them into the engine or onto the floor. On the other side, there's a big old oil return this thing could drop into, and you could lose it down to your oil pan, so you gotta be careful on that side. I would recommend just plugging that hole up with a sock or some kind of rag while you're working so you can not drop your tools or anything in there. But to get this out, it kind of slides into there in like an H. There's like a cutout on the front and the back side, so I think the easiest way is to try to grab it with some pliers wrapped with a rag or something so you don't really damage it or mar it, and just pull it back. Pulling it out is pretty easy. Just make sure you grab it with the pliers and don't drop it. But right now, so all this form in place gasket, you gotta clean off of this thing on both sides and just clean everything up here. And then on the actual block side or the head side, we're gonna have to go ahead and clean all that out too on that spot so we can refill it with form in place gasket and get this thing sealed up when we get the valve cover back on. So yep, right there is a half moon, so you're gonna have to go ahead and scrape all that form in place gasket back there. Be careful not to get too much of it in the engine. At least on this back side, you can go ahead and vacuum all that out when you're done doing it, so you can clear all the debris. You don't want any of that going down into your engine and clogging up any passages. All right, went ahead and plugged that big old hole in the back there in case I dropped anything, but all right, got these two out. Go ahead and clean these up. Let them soak a little bit with some super clean. So in here, I've pretty much cleaned up all the surfaces with acetone just to try to get it all off. What you want to do is take a razor blade, get any leftover residue and stuff off, especially around here where you have form in place gasket, like some residue from that. The acetone will go ahead and melt all this old RTV form in place gasket off. You could also scratch it with your fingernail like I can do right here. But then take a cotton ball with some acetone, that's what I did, and just kind of go over it before we finish up and put the gasket on. The hardest part is back here with those half moons. You actually have to scrape off the old stuff. There's still some on here. I haven't really worked on it yet, but I need to get a little razor blade, try to scrape off as much as I can, and then I'll go ahead and get some acetone on there and a cotton ball and kind of try to dissolve it all, because you got to get that clean because you got to put the new ones in with the same form in place gasket. So next on the valve cover seal replacement, after we cleaned everything up there, is to replace all the washers. So these things, I ended up screwing all of them off of here. It was a big pain in the ass because once you crush this down, it kind of stays in there. You got to unscrew all of them. I just used a drill and a pair of pliers. Luckily, the new ones that come onto here slide right in because they're not crushed yet. You can see the profile right there. When they're new, they're much fatter and thicker, and the opening is much wider. Once you tighten them down, they flatten out. So we'll go ahead and replace all 19 of those onto the screws to get that ready. Right, so I went ahead and prepped the valve covers. I put the new gaskets in all around. You saw earlier we already put in those gaskets, I went ahead and just put a little bit of oil on all the edges. That way it lubes it up and it gets it on there. So we're pretty much prepared here. The next thing I need to do is put the form in place gasket I have here, the packing material, along the quarter moons or the half moons back there. So we have to go ahead and do that, stick that in there. Once you put that coating, you just put it right into the center of the middle there. You have about 5 minutes to get these in place before they're set, and then we want to get the valve covers on top. So I'll do 2 at a time on these, so that way I can get the valve cover on there. Actual valve cover side, you want to make sure you clean the back of there. I showed earlier that we cleaned and wiped that down with some acetone, so we want to make sure that's completely clean. And then right here on this spot right here and on top, before it meets this end cap here, you want to make sure that's clean and put some of that form in place gasket right there too. So we went ahead and put some right there on the edge, and then we're gonna go ahead and get it back there on those half moons into that spot, and then get the valve cover on. In there, it kind of rotates a little bit, so you just want to rotate it in there just to get the squeeze through and get it in place, so that way it's flat. Once we put the valve covers on, it should hold, and then bolt it down. These things are like 11 foot-pounds as far as torque goes for the 10 millimeters. All right, we were able to get everything bolted back in there and tightened down. Pretty much everything is like 5 or 6 foot-pounds, so you really don't need to torque it. Just make sure you tighten it down. A lot of these, once we tightened them down, we had to basically squish that rubber gasket back down to flat again, as well as get the gasket on the actual valve cover all seated down from its brand new position to get it tight. So you basically just get it down hand tight, and then we'll probably have to check it again later on after we drive it a couple thousand miles just to make sure it's tight and we don't have any issues. So now the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and change out the spark plugs on here, as well as the PVC valve right here that I took off when I was cleaning everything. So we're going to go ahead and change that out, as well as the hoses. So here's the OEM Denso plugs for this vehicle, the SK20R11. I ended up buying these from the dealer because they were like $1 more than buying them from Rock Auto or anywhere else aftermarket. for the same exact plug. These things you also want to make sure when you get them, whether you get them from the dealer or anywhere else, you want to make sure that you check all the markings on here, verify the tip and everything, make sure it's all the correct ones, non-counterfeit. In the past videos I did on my Sienna and my other cars, I did get a set of fake ones from the dealer of all places, but they ended up taking care of me. It was some kind of mistake from their warehouse or distribution, but we were able to get that resolved before I ended up putting it in the vehicle. But you always want to make sure you look up all the telltale signs. If you want to check out my previous videos, I went over that on my other vehicles when I did spark plugs. These are actually in pretty dang good condition. 120,000 miles. The tips and everything look really good on these, hardly even worn out. And I know these are original just from the condition of everything else on this vehicle. These are original to the vehicle. They're all from the same batch, Denso. They all have the same date code, the MJ stamping on all around the rim of them on this side. But overall, these look really good. I just measured the gap on them and they all still have the original 042 gap, which is pretty amazing for 120,000 miles and 16 years. So definitely these iridiums last a long time. The telltale sign that these were original plugs from the factory. They've got the P on the top of here. Some of my other vehicles I've taken out where I know they were the original factory ones from the factory also has some kind of stamping on this on the end of it. So all 8 of these have that same stamp. So for sure these were the original ones that came with the vehicle from Japan, and they have all the markings to show. But overall these things were in very good condition for 120,000 miles and 16 years, and they probably could have made it another 50 or 60,000 miles without an issue. One of the things you want to do when you reinstall them is make sure you take that rubber end out of the actual socket, because what happens is once you stick it in there and tighten it down, that thing's gonna get stuck inside there and it's gonna be a pain in the ass because you're gonna end up having to take it out anyways. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna end up torquing this down to about 16, maybe 17 foot-pounds once it's tight. Got everything torqued down, put all the coil packs. Remember when I took these off, I had numbered them 1, 3, 5, 7 on this side, just to make sure I put them back in the right spot, even though it doesn't really matter. They're all the same coil packs anyways. I went ahead and finished that, put this bracket back on, so we're pretty much done on this side. We go, once we put everything back with a new hose right here that we just replaced and reconnect everything, it's good on this side. I'm gonna go ahead and time lapse the other side as I change the plugs on that side, and we're pretty much done with the valve cover and spark plug job on this. So we got everything pretty much tightened down, plugged up, all ready to go on the spark plugs and coil packs and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that PCV valve that's right here. It requires a 22mm wrench to screw that thing on. You want to just screw it on tight and then connect the hose. The hose from here goes to this spot right here, and that's that new hose that I bought that was cracking and hard as hell. Along with changing all that out, some of these hoses that are for the PVC as well as the other valve cover to intake hose, these things are freaking rock hard and all cracked up. So I ended up picking up a new set right here. I think ended up paying about 25 bucks I think for this set right here for these hoses. We'll end up reusing the clamps on here, but they're OEM hoses that fit right and everything, and these are definitely softer. You can just feel it compared to these rock hard ones from 18 years worth of use. So for the PVC valve right here, I got brand new one. You can notice it already comes with the Loctite, the dried on Loctite on the thread, so you don't have to worry about re-putting that on there. There's the part number for it on the side, but this is an OEM part. It costs about 5 to 6 bucks from the dealer. So we'll go ahead and screw this into the valve cover and tighten it down. It's pretty simple. Just tighten it on, make sure the valve goes upward, replace that little insulator cap that came off the old one right there, and then just reconnect everything with these little clamps that come with it on that new hose, and we're good on this side. Over here, that's a pretty straightforward. It's a straight hose that comes off of here. I'll go ahead and stick that one on. That goes into the intake. Hey guys, thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this video. As you can see, changing that seal was a big ass pain in the ass. It was a lot more involved than it should have been, especially on my motor where I had all that sludge and gunk that I had to clean up. I've spent the better part of a month right now doing this timing belt service, water pump, and all these different seals. I've been working on each piece for a few hours every night. I'm very OCD, so I wanted to get everything clean and perfect, as well as waiting for parts that I discovered I needed along the way. Anyways, if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.